Thanks again for joining us. My name is Brad Grimes. I'm with AVIXA, the Audiovisual and Integrated Experience Association. I'm joined on stage now by Ann Brigida, our Senior Director of Standards, and Jonathan Tulip for VENAV, who, I swear this is true, we asked to come on stage this week to talk about how his company uses standards in its audiovisual designs, not knowing that 2 nights ago, VENAV would win the Innovation Award for standards application, which was fantastic. So this is fortuitous. I've had a great week on the main stage. I've spent a lot of time with award winners, so congratulations.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you up here. Again, we are the Audiovisual and Integrated Experience Association. Thank you to ISE and our partner CEDIA for everything that goes on this week. I do want to, since I'm on the stage and probably only here one more time, I want to thank Improve for all the work that they did on this stage, putting this venue together on the show floor. They did a great job. They do a great job of recording everything that we do up here, making sure all the speakers and presenters are comfortable. This is a nice place in Hall A or 8 to sit and hear a little bit of knowledge and from folks like Jonathan. So. Really quickly, I want to hand it over to Ann to describe for you our standards program, why standards are important, why she does what she does, and then we'll talk to Jonathan about how VENAV is using standards.
Super.
You want to use that?
Sure.
Great.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here. I want to thank you for these 30 minutes that we get to share the importance of standards with you. And I'm only going to talk for a short time because really the person you want to hear from is Jonathan. He's actually put the standards into action. Before I get started, I just want to let you know that there is a listing of all the standards that are both in progress and published already. There's a list, a pile there, and some in the back if you want some. And there's also a catalog. We'll be talking a little bit about it, and I'll show you a page or two out of there. Jonathan, I brought these for you from headquarters. These are print copies of the standards.
Nice gifts, thank you.
Who knew? Now I just will pretend it was his award gift, right? Yeah. Is there anyone here who doesn't understand the importance of standards in our workplace? Because if you're here and you doubt it, I'd love to chat with you after we finish. There's no doubt that standards improve efficiency. There's no doubt that they decrease your risk. I think that in the end, everyone understands that even though the argument usually is, well, we can't afford to do it, I'd like to tell you, you can't afford not to use standards in your business model. There are some really cool pieces to convince other people and show them just the nature of how ubiquitous use of standards is in everything that we do. I don't think there's a building that you can find where AV is not there. We all know that the experience should be something that enhances people's communication. There are hundreds of people who have worked on these documents, hundreds of your peers and experts who have spent the time to try and increase the value of what it is that you do. So I believe I have a picture of the catalog here for you. You can download this from the website, and it has an abstract for each of the standards. AVIXA started, we're new to standards world. We've only been doing this for 12 years, and any of you who use standards regularly know that 12 years of standard development is not a long time. So we have learned as we have gone along. Jonathan actually is one of those expert volunteers contributing his time so that we can raise the bar for the industry on one of the task groups, and I would encourage all of you to think about joining that effort. It is time well spent. The standards catalog also let you know that we are an accredited standards body. The important thing for you to know about that is that it isn't just us saying that the information here is good. It is a third-party accreditation, and because we are in the United States, our accrediting body is ANSI. If our headquarters were in Germany, our accreditor would be DIN. If we were in England, it would be BSI. India, I could go on forever, but we're ANSI. We are the U.S. country representative to any ISO standards that are created. This is just a picture of what you'll see if you pick up the catalog, and you can get it also at the stand here. So, Jonathan, he has the real story. He can tell you what it's like. Standards in action, so thank you.
Thank you. So we're VNAV, we are audiovisual consultants, and we also work in the role of client representation. So a lot of my point of view in my work comes from the point of view of seeing this from the owner's side. But standards are really kind of a Swiss Army knife. You can use them in multiple ways for multiple jobs. At their core, there's a lot of really great people are putting together technical information, and they provide a guide, they provide almost a practical truth that you can bring to projects. You can say that a lot of people have thought about a particular technical topic, and it gives you something very solid to hang on to. It's kind of like little islands or stepping stones in the morass of AV design and AV installations that we have to work with. But you can cling on to these little bits that work, and obviously we're trying to put together more little bits to put that jigsaw together, as it were. But beyond the technology side of that, standards give us a way to improve our industry and improve our projects. On the project side, then we like to specify standards as a consultant or as an owner's rep within the project documentation. And doing so provides a set of qualitative guidance to all of the contractors involved. Now, whether that's a general construction contractor or whether that's directly to a system integrator who has a better understanding of these things, it gives an indication of where that outcome should be. And to some degree, it stops us getting into this situation where the work is undervalued, where we want to have a projected image which is 15:1. We want to have the nice sized projector to work with the ambient light, but there's no budget for that. Or as a system integrator, you don't want to price in the 12,000 lumen projector because you know your competition is going to use an 8,000 lumen projector. The standard levels that playing field and allows us as an industry to deliver an overall better product, building it into the project specifications at the beginning by consultants or project management firms, creates that level playing field, and then no longer do you have to deliver something which is potentially substandard just because of external pressures that drive it that way. So it's a very good leaning post or something to hang on to in that manner. So if I flick forward, these are some of the projects that we've been involved recently over the last 3 or 4 years variously, and it lists some of the standards that we've used in these documents. Sometimes these standards have been adopted voluntarily as good practice by the system integrators working on the project, and sometimes these standards have been part of the specification process, and working as a client representative in this field, we've deliberately sought to include specific standards to raise the bar and ensure that we get the right level of quality from the project team. So we might, for example, specify that we would like Apex companies to work on a project, and that automatically brings in the design standard for AV, and it also automatically brings in the verification standard for AV. And those two things by themselves are very, very powerful. They're quite good general purpose documents that give a lot of guidance on how we should do our business to get a good outcome. Bringing that together allows it all to be priced in. So
I want to mention briefly the standards that we're writing are performance standards. So we're looking at the system holistically. We're also doing documentation. So when Jonathan's speaking about technical, he's speaking about technical within that body. For instance, we have one standard that is a performance verification standard for any kind of AV system, and that there are many technical elements within it, but what it's doing for Jonathan, as he mentioned, is providing that large umbrella to say, is this project done, and how can you verify that?
That's right. In fact, some feedback we get quite often from system integrators on projects where we specify the verification standard is, well, we like this, we think it's a good idea, but it's overly burdensome, or it's a long, expensive process for us. But what we've actually found is that when we go through that process, our integrators get off-site sooner, they get off-site with less snags, they get paid faster, they get their 10% retention sooner. They have to invest the time, it's not a free, it's a transaction. You have to invest the time in having the people on site to make the tests at the various stages. But because those tests are gone through, there's no big nasty surprises along the way for either party, and it can be corrected and steered along the way. And we find that dramatically improves project outcome, because our non-technical end user, our clients, are really looking for a completion date, when can we move in, when can we do our big show, when can we use our library, all of these factors, and that really helps us get it across the finishing line, conduct the training, and have nice fully working systems. So on balance, that tends to be a project cost saving, although initially, if you look at it on paper, it requires more labor and more skills on the project site. But taken as a commercial financial equation, it seems to work out in terms of reducing the project cycle and the time on site.
Right.
I've got one question. This is obviously an impressive list of applied standards, and I don't mean to put you in a position of picking your favorite child, but are there standards that you use more than others, or when you approach a project, do you look at a project and say, that's a standard I can apply here? I see the audio coverage uniformity standard used quite frequently. How do you look at a project and say, these are the types of standards that go here?
Audio uniformity coverage is really handy, and it tends to go really well. Most people get that, and it works out good. People see that in a project, realize that they want to make sure that the auditorium sounds good, and they have a lot of success with that one. That one's really good. The one we perhaps use more would be 2D contrast. I think that's made a lot of difference over the last few years, where we've had in the past quite a lot of problematic installations, and it's been able to remove that ambiguity about what is correct and appropriate, and it allows us to deliver projects. Projection is a fabulous medium, but comparing it to flat panel displays or LED, somehow it seems different, and we've over the years developed a habit of accepting that projection is a lesser cousin to direct view LED or a flat panel, but really that standard allows us to put it back on that same playing field and have projection perform as it should, changing that user expectation that a soft washed out yellow is an okay thing in a boardroom. And for us overall as an industry, offering solutions to corporates or to museums and so forth, it raises our game and shows that we're delivering the right thing. So that standard has been tremendously useful to us.
We hear that a lot, that people are very grateful to have that document to show someone, to say, I'm not making this up. Here is the contrast that you need to get that user experience that you're looking for.
Yeah. Perhaps the one that's used the least, and I would encourage everybody to look at and take something away from, is the design standard, the project process standard, which encapsulates very many core tenets of our business and how to deliver a successful project, from liaising with the client and capturing needs analysis, to going through concept design, and all of these necessary stages, even if it's a simple room like this or a meeting room where it's almost a one-paragraph document to go through concept design. It's an important stage because it keeps everybody on the same page, it keeps the project team together, the coordination starts to come together because that information has been published and created. We know that, for example, we might look at a meeting room and we know that coordination is required with the windows for the ambient light, or with the acoustics, or with the air conditioning, because we want to have ceiling microphones and we're worried about the ambient noise. It starts to highlight all of those things at the appropriate phases in the project so they can be discussed with the various elements of the project team. And it gives you kind of a checklist to avoid missing things along the way, or to go, oh yes, we should have thought of that.
Yeah, that the standard Jonathan is talking about is under revision, and one of the revisions that the task group has decided is a very important aspect of it is minimum documentation, so that you have a requirement for providing, regardless of what the size of the project is, a minimum amount of documentation so that everybody's expectations are managed in that project and we know what's going on from start to finish. So it's a
and the point you make that it's being revised, it's important to understand that just as this industry changes, the standards are living and evolving all the time. We're required to revisit them to make sure that they reach the goals that they're set to reach. And volunteers look at that and make sure that the standards are up to snuff.
Right, and as you know, our industry changes about every 5 minutes, so we should be doing them more frequently, I guess, but it's a great way to update the information and keep it. A standard's supposed to solve a problem, so if the problem's gone away in 5 years, there's no need for the standard. That doesn't happen often, but it could, so it's a very living document, and I think the important point there is that we don't want it to just be a document,
And they solve problems for both sides of the equation. I mean, Jonathan, can you describe what they've done by utilizing standards? Are you saving money? Are you getting projects completed faster? What is the tangible benefit to you? And then on the flip side, what do you believe is a tangible benefit to the customer?
That's right. So as I was saying, they're kind of a Swiss Army knife, and you can come at it from all directions. So on the technical level, as a designer, as an integrator, it helps you validate your thinking. It helps you go, have I chosen the right size of projector? Do I have enough loudspeakers in my room? Is there enough gain before feedback? And at the technical level, that's really powerful, because unless you've built a room exactly like that before, it's very hard to pluck out the confidence and the knowledge from thin air and know, yeah, that's going to work. So having a group of people produce documentation that gives that guidance is very, very powerful. And as we just said, because our technology moves very quickly, if you have built a room like that before, it might be a few years past and things move. So it's very hard to predict how a sound system will perform using technology of 18 years ago, using point source clusters versus using line arrays. The outcomes are actually completely different. So again, the documentation is a great guidance. But then the standards work for all parties. So that's helped our designers. We talked about how we can help our system integrators by getting off the project sooner and so forth. But then from a client's point of view, there's a great fear. You sign off a project to start, to run, and you kind of push the boat off into the lake, and you hope it sails to the other side, and you hope you like the destination when you get there. So along with the various reports and so forth in the project process, knowing that there are standards in place that even as an end user, if you don't understand the technical details of that, are intended to get you to the other side of the lake in one piece and with an outcome that's favorable and acceptable, is a very reassuring factor. But then equally, once we arrive at the far shore and we decide whether we've discovered South America or India or in a sort of Magellan example, we may disagree. And I think this often comes up, that client expectations change through the evolution of the project, because new client stakeholders come on board and parties change. And it's important to have that standard to fall back on and say, no, this is the appropriate solution, the appropriate way. And also that standard, the design standard, for example, brings along that documentation that allows that comparison between the starting point, the thing that was agreed and priced and bid, and the end point. And even more importantly, the layer kind of above that is that with that documentation process, using that standard, you can correct the course as we go along. Now, whether that course is to say, in order to achieve what your new project members need, or as with the National Library, for example, when we started that project, we had no librarians. There was just no staff. We had a beautiful piece of architecture and a huge project team, huge construction team, but very, very few stakeholders. We had some international experts on libraries and on book sorting systems and so forth, but we didn't actually have very many of the people who would sit in the library and do their job there and read their things. But we were able to correct our project course about 50% through the construction process, sit down with a new crop of stakeholders, those people that would run all of these different departments, and because we knew what was in place contractually already and how it was to be standardized, we were able to then redirect our course to meet these new sets of goals without it being a contractual problem, without it turning into a bit of an argument about who should be doing what for free. Or it was very clear, and it was very easy to meet the new set of requirements, and that had increased budget consequences, but the client was very comfortable with that because they understood clearly they were getting the base things and that these things were now additional. They weren't part of what was previously conceived by the earlier consultants and so forth, and it was a very smooth development process, and it led to a very, very good outcome on the project. It's that clarity and the inclusion of standards from the client side, from the owner's representative side, from the system integration side, the general contractor side, and from the consultant designer side, all really comes together to hold the project kind of in stasis and on track in the middle.
That's great.
Maybe that was kind of what you were asking.
That's great. This is clearly a topic that we could spend 3 hours here talking about, and I encourage you to pick up any of the handouts that Anne brought. This is also a topic that lends itself well to questions. And I haven't used the catch box all week. If anybody has a question for Jonathan or Anne from the stage, just raise your hand, I'll bring it over. Here we go. Ooh, I get to do this.
I think you're supposed to throw it.
Yeah. You need to talk to the X, I'm told to tell you.
Should work. Hello.
My general impression is that the American market is a lot further ahead than the European market when it comes to adopting standards. And I'm finding in the UK, you have to kind of sell it really hard. It's not in the DNA of people in the UK. I was wondering if that's your experience or what we can do about that in the European market.
I don't really know. I don't have a stat on that, but I would say that the European market is every bit as eager to. That has not been my experience so far. I think that we're all in the same playing field. So I think it's how you speak to your client that really matters, and maybe that's where we can make some adjustments in how we're talking to.
It's probably that early documentation you've got and what case studies you've got that we can help us to sell it into the clients. And I'm absolutely all for it, but it's just having as much ammo as I've got to be able to get it in there.
Take Jonathan with you.
Yeah.
What is that? What's your experience, Jonathan?
There's a cultural difference. So in North America, we are a lot happier with contracts in general. and having lawyers come to project team meetings and that kind of thing. So the inclusion of more documentation and more clarity that comes with that is kind of just a natural course. It's not just the AV business. I think it's much broader than that. Europe, we have kind of an attitude which has worked really well for us in the past, which is, yeah, sure, we can do that. We'll have it tomorrow.
Right.
And I think traditionally in our industry, yes, we have managed to get it done by tomorrow. Yeah, more or less. But then we've grown. This whole AV industry has got so much bigger, and we have so many now specialisms within that, and if my experience is like yours, we're all chasing around to get enough good staff to do the job, and it's just we're under this pressure of expansion all the time, and the necessity, I think, is just as great in Europe to use the standards and so forth. And I think you guys have statistics for things like Apex adoption, and Apex, of course, drives standard usage and so forth. And Apex adoption in the UK and Northern Europe is very high, and is certainly, I think you have Apex in Portugal and Greece, I believe. So,
It's everywhere.
And that's another discussion as well.
Right.
But thank you for the question and for the opportunity to throw the catch box. We see the clock has run down, and we do need to move ahead and get the next presentation on stage. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Jonathan, thank you very
Absolute
much.
pleasure.
Congratulations on
Right.
your Innovation Award.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for spending time, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.